brands are being built this Christmas. When a brand new product category comes out, this is a brand new category, right? It's like getting the Apple II in 1977. It took a long time for that to mature into something that we could actually use, right? My first Apple II had no software. You couldn't buy anything for it, right? It had less than any of these VR systems do today, right? And yet it kicked off a $1 trillion industry because those things came because of the early efforts of nerds to do something with them, right? At Upload, every day I see something mind-blowing somebody's doing with this stuff.
Welcome to Inside VR and AR. This is a weekly podcast covering all sorts of issues in virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, whatever you might call it. And so we are kind of trying to bring in a wide array of guests, talk about different products that are coming out, different companies that are starting, and the content side of things and where this sort of emergent industry is going. And we, on this show, tend to be people that are optimistic about the future of mixed reality, augmented reality, but also interested in kind of talking about the hard questions around ethics and things like that. So Robert Scoble is here, the host of this podcast. And then today our guest is Avi Horowitz from UploadVR. And I think maybe to start, we could just kind of talk about Upload. If you want to just give us the kind of roundup of what you guys do.
Yeah, sure. So thank you for having me. Like you said, I'm Avi. I am our expansion manager at Upload. And so Upload, as a lot of you probably know, started off as just a meetup group and is now the largest online news publication for the immersive tech industry. And with the power of that media brand that we were able to build, we opened up the Upload Collective, which is just down the street from where we are currently in San Francisco. It's a beautiful 6,000 square foot co-working incubator hybrid space that houses over 40 VR and AR startups now. And out of the collective, we also run a full developer academy to help developers specialize in VR to create the content of the future that we'll all hopefully be consuming over the next few years. Yeah. Right now, we're also in the process of opening up our new location in Los Angeles, in addition to San Francisco. That's going to be a beautiful 20,000 square foot VR mecca. Can't talk too much more about it quite yet, but it's coming very soon. And it's going to be awesome.
Do you think that the center of the virtual reality universe is in San Francisco or is in Los Angeles?
It's an interesting question.
Or
I think
is it in Israel?
That also, I think that different centers of the universe are in, if that's possible, are in San Francisco and LA. San Francisco is obviously very tech and software oriented and stuff, and LA it really is the mecca of the content creation, though. So we expect to be housing a very large demographic of those content creators in Los Angeles, and whereas in San Francisco we see a lot of the more tech side of the industry.
Yeah. Yeah. I invited Avi because we have the best conversations at Upload about what's happening in the industry, and he's one of the bright young stars, right? I think you're less than 20 years old, right?
Just turned 20 last week.
Oh, man.
Actually.
Man. Well, happy birthday.
Thank you.
I missed that it was 20. I thought it was 19.
It was 19 for a while. But.
And a lot of the reason we're doing this show is we assume some people are getting VR for the first time this holiday season, right? Whether it's a Sony PlayStation VR or a Gear VR or a Oculus Rift or a HTC Vive. And, even I'm getting stuff brand new. We just got our touch controllers for the Facebook, for the Oculus Rift, I don't know, about 10 days ago. And my kids and my friends have been playing with those and seeing what's going on. But we wanted to talk about what should you do with your first VR machine when you do get VR. What's the first 3 or 4 things you should try on it, and show your friends, when you have them over for dinner on holiday break.
I was thinking even before that. A lot of people probably have already purchased holiday gifts, but I think it might be worth us just kind of going through the headsets that are out there. I know that a lot of our audience is kind of pretty familiar with this stuff, but also we're getting a lot of new listeners through iTunes that are kind of people. The feedback I've been getting is like people that are just learning about this world, and so I think I thought it'd be helpful to just kind of go through, and we can kind of have a conversation about the ups and downs of these different headsets.
I put them into 3 buckets. There's the high-end headsets like the HTC Vive and the Oculus and the Sony PlayStation VR that cost at least $800 and up. I spent about $2,000 on my setup. The HTC Vive is $800 for the headset, the controllers, and the boxes that go on the wall to build your play space. They're called lighthouses. And you need a PC. And this is a big point of contention with a lot of people, and why a lot of people have resisted VR, because a lot of the richest people have Apple ecosystems, and you can't use an Apple product yet to play VR. You need a PC with a NVIDIA style GPU and a good gaming PC, or you need a Sony PlayStation VR at the high end.
But anyways, those 2 are kind of the heaviest hitters. They're $800 headsets, HTC Vive and Oculus Rift, and both of them require essentially the same computing setup, which is like $2,000, or maybe you could
I don't know.
less.
You can go cheap on a $500 PC that has a halfway decent GPU, but if you want to be future-proofed and have the latest, you need a 1080 card from NVIDIA, and that costs $600, right?
Honestly, the lowest that anyone should really spend on a PC if they're trying to get it for a Vive or a Rift setup is, I honestly wouldn't go any lower than like a $1,300 PC or something like that. Something with at least like a 1060, preferably like a 1080.
Yeah, and that GPU is the 1080 card from NVIDIA is $600 retail alone.
Yeah,
and that's without the PC that you need, right? That's another $600. That's why you're getting up to the $1,300 level, right?
Yeah.
So then the next step down would be PlayStation VR, which is something like.
Well, the second bucket is the mobile VR, which is Sony PlayStation VR.
Oh, okay. VR. I didn't know you would put that in mobile VR.
I think of them similar to Robert, with like the top tier being the Vive, the Rift, and the PSVR, just because they have it. 2 out of the 3 of those have like the very full 6 degrees of freedom. PSVR does have 6 degrees of freedom, but the tracking just isn't quite as good as what the Rift has, and definitely nowhere near as good as what the Vive has. The Vive is the best tracking out there for sure. And I think the second tier below that you were starting to get at is the mobile VR that
Daydream.
Daydream, the Gear. Ones like that, but the real separation on those, aside from just being mobile driven, is the fact that at least at this point in the industry, they don't have 6 degrees of freedom. It's just the most you can get is interactive 360 video.
And you should tell us what 6 degrees of freedom means.
Sure. So the 6 degrees of freedom is, there we go. So it's and you can probably explain this a little bit better than I can, but with mobile, you're able to rotate your head on the x-axis and on the y-axis, and be in a 360 environment. The rest of the degrees that bring you up to 6 in total is when you can move along the z-axis as well and move in space.
Yeah. In common English, this means you can play basketball against your friends over the internet, which you need a 6 degrees of freedom.
It means when you're playing a first-person shooter game and someone's shooting at you, you can move and dodge them.
Yeah.
And actually, like Matrix style, move out of the way of stuff.
And we'll talk about
I think the simplest way to kind of
we'll talk about super hot in a minute, because that's what he's hinting at.
Is like 360 video would be a VR experience that is not 6 degrees, and then
Yes.
anywhere where you're able to take steps into
Yes.
an environment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to do in 3 degrees, right? You mentioned 360 video. In fact, I should pull out my new camera. Gyroptics just gave me a new camera that's coming out next month, which is a small camera on an iPhone. Now I can take 360 video. In fact, we should shoot some here, and we can put that up on Facebook or YouTube and let people experience this room in a Samsung Gear VR. Or the third bucket is these cheap headsets. Google gives away Google Cardboard or sells it for $20 or $30, and there's ViewMaster and there's Merge VR. There's a whole bunch of them that you put your phone into, and you can get 3 degrees of freedom with low-end optics and obviously a low-end experience because you're wearing a piece of cardboard on your face, or a really low-cost headset which doesn't have a lot of sensors in it. The mid tier, the mobile tier, the Gear VR actually has sensors and computing in the headset itself, which helps the smoothness and all that. And they have better optics than the cheap ones do.
So the Samsung Gear VR is like $100.
Yeah, or
$100 headset. Yeah, and then Google
$79.
Daydream, and these are the more advanced. They're headsets that you drop a phone into, but they're more advanced than a cardboard.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And you know, if you're just going to buy a stocking stuffer for somebody, you would probably buy the cheap one, right? Because you're going to go for a Google Cardboard for your kid and see if they use it. It's putting your foot in the water of this immersive media world that's coming at us, right?
So going back to PSVR, I'm curious if someone were asking either of you kind of like, I want to have VR in my living room and I'm not ready to spend $3,000, do you think going out and spending $800, if you don't own a PlayStation, I think it's $800 for all in, do you think that is a good first step to have VR in your living room, or should you be waiting until some of these other experiences get?
I'll take it on, then I'm interested in seeing what Avi says. Yes, it gets you 6 degrees of freedom, enough to play a wide variety of games and experiences. And Sony has a pretty nice catalog of content to play on this thing. And then you have a full-on PlayStation VR, or PlayStation as well, so you can play all the older PlayStation games, which gives it a lot of utility. And that's why you're seeing sales. In the high end, I think HTC has sold around 1 million units, Oculus has sold around 1 million units, and Sony is rumored to have sold 3 to 5 million units, something like that. So it's selling better, but not spectacularly better than the other two. Right?
Yeah, and I think that, and obviously the main reason for that is because Sony played it really, really well with making their VR system be able to run off of a PS4, which is already in probably like half the homes across America. So it brings that top tier of VR down in accessibility, or it raises the accessibility of it. So if you already have a PS4 in your living room, which if you're a family and you have kids, you likely do, it's just another $399 in for to have real high quality VR. So it's a great place to start on that, and Sony obviously has some great IP that they're able to play with to make some really compelling content that they already have out there. So it's definitely a fantastic place to start if you if you want to get into that high tier.
It's much more kind of plug and play than the Oculus and the Vive, which don't necessarily require tons of technical ability, but probably some. If you
the Vive console instead of a PC, the PC part of it is nerdy. You have to set up software, you have to get it loaded on the internet, all that fun stuff. And owning a console is obviously a more curated experience, right? If I was under 20, though, I would probably be hoping for either an Oculus or a Vive. Vive has more things to play on it right now, and the play space is more defined. It's a better system for doing what we call room scale, or a VR that you can walk around. The Sony PlayStation does 6 degrees, but it's really not designed to be to walk around your room in. And Oculus is sort of room scale. I have 2 cameras aiming at my play space.
You can make it room scale, kind of, but like yeah, the Vive is really.
But then you have to buy more controllers and
You have to
get
buy
more
more of the
wires
little
and more
cameras
nerdy. I mean,
So can room scale, high quality room scale VR happen in 2017 for under $1,000 all in?
yes, because the mobile phones are going to go completely past just VR, and they're going to go to mixed reality and with 3D sensors. So they're going to map out your room in 3D, and they're going to lay virtual spaces into the room that you have available, and they're going to warn you you're about to hit your window or your TV or your couch, right?
Yeah, the moment that inside out tracking comes to mobile is when that surpass is going to happen. So the difference between inside out and outside in, just for anybody that isn't quite familiar with that. So the HTC Vive, which like we're talking about is kind of at that top tier at the moment, uses something called outside in tracking, which is they have, like Robert was saying, these two lighthouses that are like these 3x3x3 black little boxes that you install in the upper two corners of your room on opposite sides where you're trying to set up your room scale system, and that those shoot laser beams out of that track points on the headset and on the controllers so that it understands where the system is in the physical environment. Inside out tracking is when all of those tracking systems, whether it be via lasers or optical, whatever it is built into the headset itself and is scanning outwardly into the room, which is obviously much more adaptive because you don't have to just be in one environment in order to use it. You can go from here, you can go out to that room out there because all of the tracking systems built in. So the second that comes to mobile, which, like Robert's saying, is hopefully going to happen in 2017.
I know it's coming because Qualcomm showed it to me on a reference design for mobile phones coming soon. You're going to have to maybe use a headset, but I think the 3D sensors are going to be built into the phone itself. So we're going to get all sorts of new capabilities. And it's not just Apple. I think Apple's the big bang next year, and Apple's going to be the big story. But Google is, with its Daydream initiative, is going to come out with Daydream 2, which is going to bring this inside-out capability and 6 degrees of freedom. And it's rumored that Samsung is coming out with its next version of Gear, which should have this, because they know. I spoke to their executives at a Slush conference a couple of weeks ago, and they know that this is going to be the hot thing coming next year. And there's others that are coming. And then we're going to see an uncloaking of a lot of mixed reality kind of devices, whether they're Magic Leap or the next version of HoloLens from Microsoft, or whatever Facebook's working on with ODG. That's a rumor that they're working on with a San Francisco company on glasses and other devices to do mixed reality. So we'll see.
All right. Well, so I think then we can move into content and talk about
yeah, because once you get one of these cool things,
have to have compelling content.
You got to have something to play, right?
It's not mass market flying off the shelves, but millions of people are going to have them in the next couple of weeks.
And brands are being built this Christmas. And what people don't understand is when a brand new product category comes out, this is a brand new category, right? It's like getting the Apple II in 1977. It took several years for VisiCalc to come out, which is a spreadsheet, or other things. It took a long time for that to mature into something that we could actually use. Right, my first Apple II had no software. You couldn't buy anything for it. Right, it had less than any of these VR systems do today. Right, and yet it kicked off a $1 trillion industry because those things came because of the early efforts of nerds to do something with them, right? And we're at Upload every day. I see something mind-blowing somebody's doing with this stuff, right? Just yesterday, somebody showed me there's a semi-trailer truck in our office. Did you know that?
On the HoloLens?
Yeah.
That was amazing. That was so cool.
This company's working for Packard, one of the biggest trucking companies in the world, and they're building a whole range of mixed reality experiences for truck drivers and for executives in the trucking industry. And they put a full blown, full
It's the
size.
largest hologram, I think, was something that I read that they like that thing is actually like the largest hologram that's been done.
Did they? What's really cool about this stuff is you can do visualizations that are new. So did you see the wind tunnel
Yeah, I did.
visualizations?
With the wind in different colors blowing over the truck to show the
Yeah.
aerodynamics and stuff. Yeah,
And
very
it
cool.
shows you the gas impact of changing the hood design or whatnot because it shows the airflow analysis on that new.
Do you see the heat signature on it too? Where it was so cool.
It's very cool. But this is an aside because we're going back in the mixed reality world, which most people aren't going to have until 2018. I think 2018 is when most consumers are going to really start understanding mixed reality. This year and next year is going to be mostly about virtual reality, I believe, in this space. Do you agree?
I agree for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Go
So, if you got your VR system tonight for Christmas or Christmas Eve, and you open it up, you get it set up, what's the first thing you should play?
Depends what system I get.
Well, let's just go straight to like an Oculus Rift kind of.
If I got the Rift, the very first thing that I'm playing is Super Hot.
Yeah.
That you're always raving about that.
It's causing a lot of trouble in my household because I have 7 and 9-year-old kids, and the game is you have to pick up the game starts, and by the way,
I'm gonna pull up a video also for anyone who's watching on video.
yeah, you can actually pull up a video on my Facebook of my kid playing it. You can watch it.
It's so cool.
And you get the first screen is you get a gun. You have to pick up the gun with your new touch controllers, and you got to shoot one of these red zombie things that are coming toward you. And if you stand still, the game freezes. It goes into this.
It goes into
slow-mo.
a very, very slow down slow-mo.
Yeah.
And you get to like kind of just move your head around like really slowly and scope out the scene so that you can like plan out tactically all your moves. And then as soon as you're ready, you like just jump into action and just start shooting people and stuff. And then, yeah, it's very cool.
But parents with kids of a certain age, probably under 13, don't like this game. My wife doesn't let me play it with my 7-year-old around, which is bothersome. So, is there the games I find for my younger kids that are appropriate are the Climb. We're having a lot of fun with that, and the Climb also uses the touch controllers, and you can climb up a rock face. And like a mountain climber would, and that's a lot of fun. My kids are having a lot of fun with that, and it just got an upgrade in the last week where the graphic quality of it is much higher, and it's a lot of fun. Any other? But anyway, Super Hot. You know, it shows off these touch controllers really well. We should talk about if you don't have the touch controllers, you're missing out in a way on Oculus.
You're missing out huge. I was an adamant Vive user always up until like a month ago. And I say the Vive is still fantastic, but the touch controllers for the Rift are really a game changer.
Yeah.
The quality of the experience with just how the controls are designed in terms of their ergonomics and et cetera is just fantastic. It takes all of the Oculus experiences and just makes them a million times better.
The breakthrough Facebook had is when your hand is in extended position, you're not touching the trigger buttons, and when you close your hand, you're touching the trigger buttons. That's why they call it the touch controller. And when you pull harder, it knows that you're touching it with more fingers, and it lets you grab things, throw things, shoot things, punch things, and it's really a lot of fun.
The way that they're designed is just ergonomically a lot better than the Vives. The Vives, you have to consistently just have a solid grip around this somewhat uncomfortable things in your hand, whereas the touch controllers, their handle just like rests in the palm of your hand, and you can have your hand in a completely relaxed state, and the controls will just be sitting in your hand. They're very, very compact. They go in like a ring around your hand, as opposed to the Vive, which is like a very long kind of stick with a sensor thing at the top. They were just designed very, very thoughtfully.
And just to clarify for people who have not used these controllers on either of the headsets, these are controllers that are tracked by the virtual reality experience. So you can, when you're holding a flashlight or a gun or whatever else in your hand with one of these controllers, you have a headset on and you can look down and actually see your hand and see the rotations that you're doing and the way that you're pointing at whoever you're pointing at. So just
to clarify.
No, and when you have these controllers in your hand, you can use something like Google Tilt Brush, which will let you paint in 3 dimensions in your room, right? Because it sees where the controller is. And then when you pull trigger, all of a sudden some glowing line is coming out of the controller as you move it around, right?
I was going to say, I think Tilt Brush is the thing I would tell anyone to try as the very first thing, because it's just so intuitive. You just understand it, and it's a game where or not a game, I guess, but you're just in a 3-dimensional environment, and you have different paintbrushes, different colors, and you can paint all around you, and you can walk through the things that you're painting, and you can paint yourself into a bubble, and then you're inside that bubble, and then you can step out of it and look at it from the outside, and it's just a mind-blowing experience. I think in the same way that Microsoft Paint was for a lot of people the first time that they did digital drawing, and which is obviously really kind of simple today, but it was fancy then.
And one thing that feature that they recently added into Tilt Brush is this incredible scaling feature, and that's where you could draw in the environment like you normally would or whatever, but then with 2 of the grip buttons that are on the side of the Vive controllers, you can spread your arms out, grip them, and then bring your hands closer together, and it shrinks the entire environment that you're in so that you can, and it works vice versa, to be able to expand out to zoom into things. So you can create a like human scale, incredibly intricate environment within Tilt Brush, and then scale that out and have like this tiny little universe bubble sitting in front of you of this place that you created, shift a little bit to the right, zoom in again, and make a whole nother little universe, zoom out again, and then just you can make all these different little universes that are incredibly, incredibly intricate when you zoom into them and see the full scale of them.
At Upload, we've been working with artists like Danny Bittman, who come in and work in our mixed reality studio. We have a studio that's a big room like this, but it's all green. So we can put people into VR into that studio and see what they're seeing. And we're getting really cool artists who are now designing virtual worlds live on Facebook in this studio and showing you how they're creating art. And every week I'm watching these artists step up their game because they're learning the tool set, they're learning workflows to make things faster, and they're learning about how to build a new virtual environment that just couldn't exist in physical space, right? Because many of these lines can react to sound and other interactions, right? So it's fun. And there's 2 or 3 competitors to Tilt Brush already. Facebook has one on Oculus, and I think Quill is really nice. And I believe Adobe's working on one as well because they don't want to let Google have their entire graphic design world, right? Because graphic design is going to be done this way. You're going to work inside virtual environments to build all sorts of things, and whoever owns the tools is going to have controls of the graphic designers, right? What else?
Other things on the Vive, Google Earth VR is very, very cool.
Yeah.
That's
one thing I really miss
experience.
about the Oculus. It's funny, being on Oculus, the touch controllers are more fun. You're absolutely right. My kids like playing with the touch controllers. I like playing with them more. But a lot of things are really buggy right now because it's brand new.
Yeah.
And Vive has been out for 6 months already, right? Yeah. So the games have gotten debugged and they've gotten really rich, and everybody understands how to work. The developers understand how to work with the controllers. Oculus had a Xbox controller for the last 6 months, and then just last week they shipped these touch controllers, and a bunch of developers don't yet have them. So they're having to chase Vive a bit. So I find the ecosystem is stronger on Vive. There's more things to do, much stronger, and the games are more mature, or not just games, because entertainment, education, adult is all stronger on the Vive because more developers are out there that understand, that have a Vive and have the controllers for the Vive, and it's pretty interesting.
I'm just pulling up the
is that
video
the video
of
for
Google
it?
Earth VR, which it's obviously a Google product, and I think Google Earth itself is like one of the most amazing products I've ever used in my life. It's just like so incredible, and the VR experience just takes it to another level where you're.
Imagine Google Earth and that you see on your computer, and then being able to fly around like Superman in that.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you can do in Google Earth VR, and it's so compellingly incredible.
Yeah, it's interesting. The
love it.
video shows the strengths of it, which is this flying around. But when you get down to street level, it starts falling apart.
It takes some time to render and stuff. And
Yeah. And also, not every city has been deeply rendered, right? San Francisco has, so you can walk around San Francisco, but you go to some place in Pakistan, and it hasn't yet been fully rendered, or it's been rendered by a satellite photo, and it's not the same.
For some of our younger audience members, I think the things like Google Earth at VR and Tilt Brush are kind of good examples to show your parents that it's not all like killing zombies in VR, and there's educational
Very true.
and it's there's some really high value content.
Yeah. What else? I mean, there's a lot of. I've been watching a lot of movies lately. I watched a couple of documentary style things that Chris Milk did on Within, which is an app on the Oculus, among other places. I believe it's also on Samsung Gear VR and Vive, and it's mostly 360 videos, but it really does show how media changes when you're in a headset. It being immersed in a place gives you empathy for that place. It gives you understanding of that place, context, in a way that you just don't understand it. And when you're flying around Google Earth, you feel the same way. When I take my kids to some place like Half Dome in Google Earth and show them what it looks like, or the old city in Jerusalem or Dubai, it really gives me a way to immerse them, and they get a feeling of being there that you just can't get with any other display type. And when you're in where was I going with this? When you're in some of these games, you really or these movies or these education experiences, you really understand why we call it immersive media, because you really feel like you're in the video, even though you can't touch things and you can't move around things right now, because the camera technology just isn't there to do volumetric kind of stuff, which you will need to be able to move around a video that was filmed at Coachella or something like that, right? But it's a lot of fun. This is why I think people need VR at home to really start understanding the personal media side of this. Because when you're wearing a headset and your kids are playing on their iPads or on their headset, you're really seeing what you want to see, not what other people want to see. It's highly personalized media, and it really brings you into places and freaks you out. One of the videos was a Syrian refugee camp, and you're in the camp, right? You're walking around, and it gives you a sense of what that place feels like and looks like, and what it might be like to be there. It gives you empathy for the people who live in that situation in a deep way, and that's some of the stuff It takes a little while to get to that, because there's so much fun stuff to play with on VR, right? And everybody wants to play Super Hot or tour around Google Earth, or play with Tilt Brush, or I don't know. What else do I usually pull up?
I was going to mention Job Simulator. I know you talk about that one, and I think it's really fun. And
what is up with Job Simulator?
Like, it's so simple. I mean, you're thrown into a job, so you're like a cook at a small restaurant, and you get orders, and you have to find the bacon in the refrigerator, and you have to cook it and figure out how to turn on the stove and all these things.
Yeah.
And there's something that's just so much fun about it.
And here's some insight. Because I have kids who are 7 and 9, and their friends are coming over and playing VR, every single person in this age range, this is all they want to play. I swear, would you like to shoot zombies? No, we want to play Job Simulator. Do you want to go to Google Earth? No, I want to play Job Simulator. You don't want to, experience everything else that's on this platform? No, we don't want to play Job Simulator. When are you going to get it, Dad? We like playing Job Simulator. And I'm like, why? Why? And it turns out there's some famous YouTubers that they all watch at this age range, and they're all playing Job Simulator. So they got brainwashed by these guys on YouTube that Job Simulator is cool, which is maybe gets to the marketing side of building brands in this world, that you have to use all the media out there, not just VR, to build brands. That's why we're doing a podcast too, right?
I think that honestly part of that might be something totally different. I mean, like when back in the day, those little like plastic tiny little kitchen sets you would get for your kids that would be like all like princess themed or something like that. I mean, that Job Simulator is literally just bringing that to VR. Yeah. Like your tiny little, like, fake little, like, easy bake oven or all those types of things that make kids feel like they're kind of like adults and
playing
stuff.
Grown up.
Yeah, but
I love it
in VR.
I love it too. I've worked in those jobs and didn't love them, like working as a clerk and a cashier. But in Job Simulator, it's really fun.
Yeah, you don't get a paycheck though. You get, that's
I know,
and that's when we know the conversion is complete. When you get paid to do virtual jobs in a VR headset, then we know the world has really flipped around, right? And by the way, those jobs are coming. I think by the time these kids are our age, they're going to be fully immersed in working in virtual things. So we're already doing that at Ford, right? If you go to Ford, you're already building cars in VR, right? And they have a whole motion capture room where you test out cars, and instead of building a model out of clay, you build it in VR and show customers, hey, do you want to buy this car, right? And Disneyland's new theme park in China was built in VR, same thing, right? So I totally expect really quickly, like within the next decade, a lot of us are going to be working completely in mixed reality or VR, right? Do you agree?
I think there's a chance, yeah.
A chance. I bet all your spreadsheets are virtualized in screens.
I mean, certainly I will be working that way. That's 100%. I mean, I know how much more efficient all that is. I mean, I back when we got the HoloLens for like the first few weeks of it over at Upload, I would steal it for like an hour every day and just throw it on with my calendar like really large in front of me, a couple of like static floating screens like my Slack channel up there or something, and just be like bussing through email on my one screen on my computer, but just be able to look up through the HoloLens and just have everything else and all these screens floating up around me and stuff. And it aside from just like the slight fatigue of wearing the HoloLens for like an hour and a half or so, it was a super, super cool productivity tool to try to use to incorporate that type of technology into like actual like everyday job and work environment.
Yeah. Somebody, let me like
time.
Tim Callahan said a hot tip: he says stand well away from someone playing super hot. And actually, that's the first thing you need to learn when you do get a VR machine. You got to set some boundaries with everybody in the room. First of all, the first person playing has to understand where the virtual play space is that they can move around in. If you're on Sony, you can only sit down. If you're on an Oculus, you can move around a little bit, but not a lot. And with a HTC Vive, you see a grid of green lines usually around you. That's called a chaperone. And it tells you when you're about to hit your TV or your couch or something in the room because you've predefined that play space. And it knows when you're going out of that play space and all of a sudden a green line appears. So that's one rule. You got to tell the people playing it, if you see green lines, back up because you're about to do something naughty and you're about to get hurt or hit something
it's
and break.
It's also really startling. I once hit a chair when I was swinging a tennis racket in selfie tennis, and it's just like you're immersed in this world where there's not a chair in front of you. Yeah, it's so jarring.
It's super jarring.
Yeah.
To just feel a hard object that you're not actually seeing.
And then you need to warn anybody who is watching or walking through the space that they can't see you. And so if you're near somebody playing super hot and they get scared, In fact, the video I shot on Saturdays of a 9-year-old girl who just gets scared and she just starts ripping her hands like this, right, trying to kill everybody. And so if you're right next to her, she's gonna whack you good, right? And so we're actually, when we have parties now, we're putting tape up to say don't go inside this space because somebody's playing VR, they're going to nail you and you're not going to like it. And it can hurt when some little kid hits you hard because they're trying to whack a red zombie in super hot or something like that. So you do have to have some rules of engagement in your house and let everybody know, hey, there's somebody playing VR, you got to watch them. You got to know what they're doing. It's your responsibility to make sure you're not hit, not theirs, because they can't see you, right? But I had somebody get hit because they didn't realize that, right? They walked right into the play space and they got nailed, and I had to learn that. Put some ropes up or something and keep people out of the play space, otherwise they're going to get accidents. Hospital visits are not fun on Christmas Eve when you get your new VR machine, right?
So in terms of news, the one thing that and Avi actually pointed this out before, but that seems relevant is Survios, the game studio, VR game studio, just raised $50 million, which is a pretty mega round for the VR space. And I think I have a video of their kind of main game, raw data. But really the point here, we've been talking about a lot of different content that already exists on these devices and or these platforms, and when you see companies like this raising big money, there's a lot more coming. So it is still the early days.
Correct me if I'm wrong. In the last quarter or two, there's almost been half a $500 million invested in VR and AR content, right?
Just within the last quarter or two?
Yeah, it's been pretty intense lately. I've started seeing a lot of deals, but it's just, let's say it's the
There's
last
a lot
year.
of money being poured into it.
There's a lot of money coming into the space, and every day it seems like I see another funding announcement of somebody building something in VR, in immersive media like this. So more is coming. More is coming. The investments are there because the investor class, when I talk with them, and I've been hanging out with investors a bit now. In fact, I saw Steve Jurvetson last night at the Ritz, who's the J in DFJ, a big VC firm. And they are all talking about the numbers will show up someday, and someday soon, i.e. in the next 24 months. And so they're starting to invest in preparation for that because they know it takes 3 to 5 years for a company to really rock and roll, particularly in a new space like this. So we're going to see a lot of fun stuff over the next year, I believe. Tim said a good suggestion for families. He says the best intro for families is using Dream Deck, which is a T-Rex and Skyscraper, and it's a fun little demo Facebook put together. And then he follows that up with Showdown on the Oculus, and then he moves to the touch tutorial. So there's tutorials that teach you how to use the controllers and let you use that in a space that looks like Job Simulator, sort of like that. And I agree with that. It's always good to run people through one of the tutorials to get them used to the act of playing in VR.
Yep.
But I find that those go pretty fast, and then you're straight on to, super hot. And he says he plays medium, Lost, Dead and Buried, and then finally super hot. So does that sound like good advice for new users? You do want to get comfortable. This is why I usually take people in a tilt brush, because there's not a zombie coming at you and trying to scare you, and you can learn how to actually make the controllers move around and how a user interface works in this new virtual world and all that. And it takes a few minutes for people to get comfortable. Once I see that they're really rocking and rolling in tilt brush, then we go into other things and start doing climb.
I always prime people with the blue at first. That's always the first thing that I put them in, because when I did try putting people into tilt brush for the first time they had never tried VR before, and they definitely did not get it first, that not only can you do stuff here, but you can turn around and do stuff over here too. They didn't really get that full 360 environment. And the blue is a phenomenal one to just get people in, to get acquainted with, okay, this is an entirely 360 environment. Okay, now let me apply that to Tilt Brush. And as soon as I do that, I see people immediately go from just doing this in front of them to like the first thing that they do when they go in is doing something big like that.
Yeah, it's a good advice. It's you gotta step them into the world.
Exactly.
So you throw them into Supra, and they're just like, "What the hell do I do? I keep getting killed by this red thing." Well, you got to pick up the knife. How do I do that? You can punch them too. A lot of people are asking me about cameras. Francine and Gary are asking me about cameras. That's why I brought this thing over. So I got my bag here with all my goodies. And Francine was asking about gyroptics versus the others out there. And let me pull out some of the others. We have the Samsung Gear VR is a little camera. So do we want to talk more about VR and the state, or do we want to get into cameras? We can talk about cameras in a second.
Yeah, I think cameras. We're at something like 50 minutes, I think.
Oh wow.
So talk about cameras.
Yeah, because when you do get a headset and you really are buying into VR, and you're immersed and you're playing super hot and you're playing with these things, then all of a sudden you realize, wow, I can watch 360 video on YouTube. Like Mark Zuckerberg put up a picture of his kid walking or a video of his kid walking the first time with one of these 360 cameras, and now you're looking around his house. It's like, wow, this is crazy. I'm inside Mark Zuckerberg's house watching his kid walk for the first time, right? Well, you can do that too at home.
Did you see his Jarvis video yesterday?
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. That's a whole nother show. And so you get a camera like these Samsung Gear VR, which is like smaller than a baseball, and it has two lenses on it, and it does 360 4K video. The problem is with that, and it's I think $350 for this one.
I think so.
Somewhere in that range, and lasts for a few hours, and it comes with a little tripod. You can put it down on like if you're shooting your kids' play, you put it down on the a stage up front, and you turn it on, and you walk away, and now it's capturing the play, right? And then you can go and show grandma what the play looked like. This gyroptics camera is a little smaller, and this plugs into your iPhone. And there's two that do this. The Insta360 Nano plugs into the iPhone, and the Gyroptics IO camera plugs in the iPhone. These are, I believe they said $249 for this. And the advantage of plugging into your iPhone is now you can live stream to YouTube and really soon Facebook. So you can turn on, like you can go to a music festival, hold your iPhone in the air with one of these cameras in it, and let your friends all watch what it's like to be in the front row of Beyonce concert or something like that. And if you do that, by the way, Avi, I'm gonna be jealous. But I'll be watching your stream, right? Because you'll be in the front row and you'll be holding up a little 360 camera.
CES party.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. And we're going to use these, by the way, because I'm getting a ride in a self-driving car that has never been seen, and we're going to be using these to give you a sense of what that experience is like. I like the new gyroptics a little bit better than the 360. The new one is smaller. It fits in my pocket better, and it doesn't get so hot. But the advantage of these things, and I shot one of the first videos, 360 videos at Coachella, and I used a GoPro rig. I had 6 GoPros in a little ball. And then I had to go home and I had to copy all the files from those 6 cameras, and I had to bring them into a software program that GoPro now owns, and I had to stitch them all together. It took hours.
And the rig was like huge, right?
It's not that big, but it's bigger than these for sure, and much more complex.
Like a basketball, maybe.
Yeah, it's maybe a grapefruit,
Like a big grapefruit,
something like a grapefruit, And you had to stitch them. These new consumer focused cameras do the same kind of quality, but with no stitching. It live streams now, right? And these are $250. That rig that I bought cost $6,000. Because you had to buy the software to do the stitching. You had to buy the 6 GoPro cameras. That's $3,000, and you had to buy a holder for it, which cost $700 plus a bunch of other things. So. Yeah, cameras are coming along and they're getting pretty nice, pretty affordable. And when you do get your headset, this works with all the headsets, right? The Gear VR, the Google Cardboard, and the Oculus Rift style headsets. And it's quite fun to watch 360 video, that you've done with your family, right? Anything to add there? You haven't played with cameras too much?
That Gyroptics one, the UI for the live streaming was seamless.
Yeah.
It's like two clicks on it and you're immediately live streaming to YouTube through it. And it plugs straight into the Lightning port. They made that one real well.
Gary is asking, Gary Glass asking, which personal camera, the Samsung, the Theta. I have a Ricoh Theta. Oh, I lent it to a friend. It tells you whether I like it or not. I mean, these newer cameras are much better to use for us media types. I think plugging it into an iPhone, it makes a lot more sense than having to copy it over later and then upload it later. But he's also asking about the commercial viability of Aura, which is a higher end 360 camera. I believe it's $3,000, and it's optimized for professionals who are going to live stream like concerts and stuff like that. If you're in the business of doing a wedding or live streaming something like music festivals or whatnot, you're going to go to those higher end cameras because the quality is going to be a little higher, and you're going to get control of the camera that you don't have on these consumer style things. Control of the brightness and control of the white balance and all the stuff that a professional videographer would need. And it goes all the way up to the Nokia Ozo, which we just had a masterclass on it at Upload. The Ozo, I think, is $45,000 now. It just came down to from $60,000. So the high end is coming down as well. And there's going to be a whole bunch of competitors like Jaunt and a whole bunch of different camera companies that at that high end for the cinematography industry who are trying to build the next Star Wars. These are aimed at consumers. And this show will generally be about, I think, aimed at consumers because I think that's where the action really is. But we'll bring along some of the pro stuff just so that people can see what the differences are when you go to a $45,000 camera instead of a $250 camera, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And Steve is asking an interesting question because I wrote a book on contextual systems, and he's asking about beacon technology. Do we see any convergence with beacons and mixed reality? Yeah, but that's probably a different show that we should go more into depth on Internet of Things devices. Because when we do get into the mixed reality world, I believe that is the user interface for everything. It's the user interface for your self-driving car, for your Internet of Things devices. So if you're working at a manufacturing plant that's all been Internet of Things updated, you can look at your printing press or your manufacturing machine and know the health of it, right? It'll show you right on the machine the sensor readings that are coming off the pumps and off the conveyor belts and stuff like that, and you'll be able to fix things wearing these glasses. And at home, we're going to use that to control our lights and our security cameras and our coffee maker, everything that's going to be IoT enabled in the next few years. That'll be a big story at CES this year. It's what more has been IoT'd, in the future. But that's a separate show, I think, outside the scope of VR. So keep tuned to our podcast next year.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I guess this is a good place to wrap up. Thank you, Avi, for joining us.
Absolutely.
For more on all of the things that they're doing, check out UploadVR.com, right?
UploadVR.com for the editorial and UploadCollective.com for all else upload.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. And then for Inside, you can find our VR AR newsletter at inside.com/VRAR. This podcast is Inside VR and AR, and it's in iTunes and SoundCloud and YouTube and all of those places. We always love when people leave us reviews. So please do that. If you like us, if you don't like us, then just email us instead of leaving a review. And then also one other thing, our Inside sister company Launch has a big conference that they do every year called the Launch Festival. It's coming up this April in San Francisco, April 6th and 7th, and they're doing a VR AR summit for a day of the festival. And so they're doing all sorts of things. There's a demo pit table, presentations, founder investor speed dating that's all focused on networking lunches and things, and it's all focused on VR AR for an entire section of this festival. So head to launchfestival.com/VRAR if you're interested in that. If you are part of a VR or AR startup or any of or an investor or any of those things. So check that out at launchfestival.com/VRAR. And that's all. We'll see you here again soon.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.